introduced right at the beginning, we also have some GPhC staff colleagues, including Mark Bose, who's our Director of Education and Training, and Amir Safdar, a Pharmacist Council member with vast experience of working with pre-registration trainees, foundation trainees, and supporting people through the process. So first of all, can I ask the question that Faris asked, which was why, where we have two papers, why do we have a requirement that if somebody is unsuccessful in one, that they have to resit the whole thing? Why can they not bank the paper they passed and just resit the paper they were unsuccessful in? Mark, can you help us with that one, please?
Yeah, thanks very much, Duncan. Thanks again for everyone for sharing our experiences tonight, and indeed those of you who've shared experiences with us separately in different events and through surveys. In relation to the question around the two parts of the assessment, effectively, although it's split into two, it is actually designed as one whole assessment in one complete way. And the standard, which is what obviously the assessment is about, making sure that everyone can demonstrate one standard that is achieved prior to registration, is set as a whole. So that's why the assessment is designed as a whole, even though it's set into two separate parts. So as has always been the case in previous years, it is designed, and unfortunately, if you don't get through one part of that, it's necessary to repeat both parts next time round on that basis. But I wonder if I could also, Duncan, just pick up the point around the difficulty of the papers, which I think quite a few candidates have talked about tonight. And it's important, I think, to understand how our Board of Assessors works on this in terms of the actual decisions around how pass mark is achieved. So in simple terms, we have a sort of quite a very detailed process in relation to how the standard of the exam is set and the pass mark achieved beyond that, to make sure we take account of the particular situations. And I think it's important to remember that there's a very clear approach to this in terms of assessing the relative difficulty of papers. It does mean that if, for example, the Board of Assessors decides that a paper is more difficult, for example, in one case, the pass mark is adjusted accordingly, and therefore it reflects the sort of difficulty of the papers, and the pass mark reflects that. I think there's been quite a bit of commentary, for example, on social media and other areas, which kind of assumes there is a sort of set pass mark of e.g. 70%, and that's not right. So if, for example, the paper is on the basis of the really detailed statistical work which goes on, regarded as more difficult, then that will be reflected in the pass mark rather than being in any way sort of penalising people on that basis.
So the standard is the same, consistently upheld, or
exactly, yeah.
The difficulty of individual papers can vary, but that is managed through the varying the pass mark, as you've explained. Mark, whilst you're on, can you also address the question that's been asked that we've had earlier this evening, but also over the course of the last few weeks? What is the GPhC doing to address allegations of misconduct and some allegations of cheating? There's a sense of unfairness, I think, for some candidates around that.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, this is something that's been raised quite a lot with us by our candidates in different ways. So clearly, when overwhelming majority of people, as we've indicated tonight, have spent such a long time working so hard over 5 years, it is obviously distressing to think there might be some candidates who are seeking to gain an unfair advantage on that. Where we have received any allegations of misconduct, we are, of course, taking those forward and are taking that forward in relation to a small number of candidates where the evidence indicates that. And that has been in particular in relation to the alleged use of mobile phones or calculators. What I would say, of course, is that this needs to be based on evidence. There's been, again, quite a lot of commentary around this, and it's very important for us that we're making sure that any allegations are supported by evidence, and that's what the approach we've taken forward. I think there has been some unfortunate commentary in terms of alleged gains by candidates elsewhere, which have not been substantiated at all by the evidence on that basis. So it is very important, I think, to emphasise that we are talking here about a small number of candidates who have been contacted on this basis. But clearly, it is very important in that sense of fairness that you mentioned, Duncan, that if there is evidence around that, we do actually address those, and that's what we're taking forward.
Sarah Steen is our head of registration. I've got a question, Sarah, that's come through from a number of candidates, some of whom are concerned about whether answers they gave during the exam might have got lost. Can you help us with that one, Sarah?
Yes, we have got results for all the candidates that sat, so everything has been saved. There's no need to worry on that front.
Thank you, Sarah. And Mark, I'm going to come back to you because one of the questions that Angelina asked earlier in the evening that we've had asked in a number of different ways is about whether the GPhC has been, as it were, treating candidates more favourably, if you like, for those who experience severe delays at particular centres, and whether we're treating fairly other candidates who on an individual basis experience serious issues which may have impacted on their ability to have a fair sitting. I think I mentioned this earlier, but I wonder if you could just nail that one for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Inevitably, I think with the initial focus on the appalling situations that happened in Nottingham, but also the delays elsewhere in particular centres, was a very understandable perhaps focus on that point initially. And that's why perhaps a lot of the initial communications were highlighting that candidates in those situations who had experienced delays of, for example, 30 minutes or more would be eligible for a refund, for the sitting not to count as one of their attempts, and to be eligible for provisional registration. But we also, I think, very, very quickly recognised to all the feedback that candidates were giving us, but also from our own investigations in the early stages of this, there were many other candidates, as indeed we've heard tonight, who were not affected necessarily in one particular centre, which had wholesale delays, had a number of individual issues affecting them, relating to, for example, as we've heard, where key codes didn't work, or where the screens froze in that particular way, or indeed where there may have been major disruption from other candidates or noise from invigilators and others. But what we said very clearly with that is that these, in our view, where this disruption was significant in this particular sense, to the point where you were not able to take the exam fairly in your own way that you would have expected to do, that you ought to be appealing if you are unfortunately unsuccessful on this basis. And where that appeal is upheld, you'll be in exactly the same position as those, for example, who suffered the more obvious delays in centres and therefore would be eligible for that refund, would be eligible for the sitting not to count as one attempt, and to be eligible for provisional registration.
Very much, Mark. Now we have run over slightly on the advertised time, but I think it was important. We have got all of the questions that you've asked in advance and this evening have been captured, and we will be producing and keeping update our frequently asked questions and using the questions you've given to help improve the communication we share with all candidates. So your questions have not gone to waste, and they will all be answered. Either if we haven't answered them tonight, we'll be answering them over coming days. So thank you very much for that. We are going to move towards the close of the session. I'd like to hand over to Amir Safdar to give us some closing remarks on behalf of the council. Thank you, Amir.
Yeah, thank you, Duncan. Thank you, everybody. Firstly, a big apology from me personally and from council in terms of what happened to you guys. It's breaking my heart. I'm so emotional at the minute. I've been given a script, but I'm not going to go through that script in terms of what to say. It's just really, really, really killing me. The best thing for you guys to do is to think positively when it comes to the D-Day when you get your exam results, because you never know, you might have passed. If you haven't passed, then Mark's already outlined what you need to be able to do. But remember, you've still got provisional registration, so you'll still be able to work and get paid and work as a pharmacist with some restrictions. And the exam's only a few months away from now. And also to make sure that you tap into what Riven was talking about from pharmacist support, particularly if you need that sort of help, and get there early. I know the Listening Friends scheme is very, very good, and so is the counselling, having experienced that myself before. But when you go into the second exam, when you do your resit in the November exam, try to forget about what happened. I know it's really, really difficult, but try to forget what happened in June and go again with a fresh state. And if you do need to tap into anybody, please, I'm available. I'm on Twitter. DM me. It's not a problem. We can talk from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Amir. Very powerful and heartfelt and a fitting conclusion to this brief session. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. And again, particular thanks to the candidates who shared their experiences with us so vividly in such a dignified and powerful way, and to all of the candidates who joined us this evening and given up your time to help us improve things both for you but also for those who come to sit the exam after you. Thank you very much.